Welcome you all to today's webinar, Nurturing Your Small Dollar Donors. This webinar is part of the Adapt2Achieve Training and Education Program. For more information, you can visit disabledsportsusa.org/adapt2achieve. Please save the date for our upcoming webinars, which are free. On September 30th, we're offering online fundraising tools to support athletic event fundraisers. And on November 5th, we're offering best practices for website accessibility for nonprofits. A couple housekeeping items for this webinar. All participants are in listen-only mode. Please ask questions during the presentation using the question box on the right-hand side of your control panel. We'll make our best effort to answer all of them during the presentation. If we don't get to them, we will answer them individually after the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and will be available shortly on the DSUSA YouTube page. Today's topic, Nurturing Your Small Dollar Donors, is being presented by Amy Sample Ward, CEO of the Nonprofit Technology Enterprise Network, also known as N10. N10 aspires to a world where all nonprofit organizations use technology skillfully and confidently to meet community needs and fulfill their mission. Amy Sample Ward has been with N10 since 2011 and became the organization's CEO in June of 2013. She is dedicated to educating and supporting the nonprofit community in the use of cutting-edge technology. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amy to present on Nurturing Your Small Dollar Donor.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rob. And hello to everybody on the line. As Rob said, I would love for you to ask questions throughout the webinar whenever they come up for you. That goes for clarifications if something I am sharing is making absolutely no sense, or if you want to dig into that topic a little bit deeper, or if you have a question that it brings up, whether for your organization's specific use of fundraising or things that you've seen other organizations do. I would love for this webinar to be as valuable as it can, and that means I really want to make sure I'm answering the questions that you have, or we're able to address some of the topics that are of most interest to you. So use the questions in the chat, and Rob can interrupt me at any moment. I will not be offended. So what we're going to cover today, looks like the slides are not advancing. It's interesting. There we go. So today we're going to cover a million things in 57 minutes. It's going to be Guinness World Record today, but we do have a lot to cover, so I'm going to move fairly swiftly at times. So again, if I can further clarify or answer questions, especially if we are moving quickly, please interrupt. Please share those questions. So we're going to tackle first some assumptions and some of the data around online fundraising, especially as it comes to those smaller donation numbers. Look at some approaches for how to engage with these donors, whether you're already trying to or it's going to be a new addition to your communications and outreach plans. And then we're going to talk about some ways to use social media and different technologies that can help you with this. So our first assumption to tackle, popular opinion, is that nonprofits really need to be doing some sleuthing online, doing some researching, identifying those handful of folks, sending your executive director out to lunch with them, and that those folks are going to write a big dollar check right there at lunch. And that's, it's just such a high number that it's worth focusing on those people. And I'm not going to say that it's there's no value in that, but what I love about this example, we all remember the election, and the fact that Obama was able to raise more donations that were less than $200 each, and that in total was able to be more than all of Mitt Romney's donations added together. I think it just really shows the power of what a $10 donation or a $25 donation can mean, and the impetus then is not just on getting out there and getting all those donations, but as we'll talk about in the webinar today, making the person who made that $10 donation feel like it was really valuable, it was really important, and you see their donation, you're thankful for it, and you're following up with them. The second assumption to tackle here is that online giving is just such a small portion of the fundraising pie in America that, it's just so small we don't really need to care about it or don't need to focus much effort there. So this is a screenshot from the Blackbaud Index, which is an online available tool that you can check. They update it every month on the first of the month, and it's looking at year-over-year changes in fundraising data. This is a screenshot where we're looking at all organizations. I haven't filtered this by type, and looking at the past 2 years. And you can see online giving continues to have much higher increases than general donations. And our third assumption to tackle quickly is this idea that younger people, normally defined as millennials, so those born after 1980, just aren't likely to give. Here's a report, the Millennial Donor Report that Achieve has done for the past 3 or 4 years. This is their latest one that came out last month, looking at specifically the donation behavior of millennials. And I think what's very easy to see here is that the small number is those who didn't donate, not a small number of those who did. And to look at the fact that there are young people already donating $1,000 or more is promising also to maybe other staff or your boss who are thinking, but we really need those high-dollar donors to balance out some of these smaller ones. Well, as you can see in this graph, even within the millennial donor base, there are people at all those different spectrums. So those are the first 3 assumptions, but what I really want to spend some time talking about and cover data around is email. Email is still the key piece to communicating with people online, and it's the key way that you can drive people towards a fundraising ask, towards an online advocacy action. It is the most direct way to communicate still for many organizations. Of course, there are organizations testing out text messages with their supporters or doing direct mail. All those pieces still exist. But when we're talking about small dollar donors and being able to get them to a place where they're making that donation and then following up with them about what that donation means and how far those dollars have gone, email is really the key. So each year we at N10 partner with M&R Strategic Services and do this benchmarks report. It's free. You can get the latest one at mrbenchmarks.com. And it's looking at email rates as well as donations. It's an interesting approach to a report, so I just want to explain it really quick. And that is we partner with a number of nonprofits so that instead of putting out a survey where people are kind of self-reporting their answers, by partnering with them, they give us access to literally go into their systems, count those emails, look at what the click-through rates were and donation rates, et cetera, so that we're able to really validate the data we're reporting, and it's not an open survey. So a number of the charts I'm about to show look like this, where there's a vertical line, and that's representing the 25 to 75 percentile, basically, and then the dot there is the median. So it can be helpful to look at that and see if you're on that spectrum somewhere, even if you don't have, that specific number. So jumping in, focusing first on just email activity before we look at the actual dollars raised. So email list growth, this really just means how many people are on your list, are in your database, are you able to email with? And you'll see different breakdowns on different charts. Some are by the size of the organization's budget. Some are by the activity or the mission focus of the organization. So here when we're looking at by sector, we consistently see interesting numbers around international focused organizations or wildlife and animal organizations. And as you can imagine, some of what's happening there are international relief issues. So if there is, for example, a tsunami or a hurricane, and international relief organizations are really the key drivers of aid, their numbers often in the year following are very skewed because of that. And then wildlife and animal organizations, well, everybody gets to benefit when they're able to put, a cute kitten in their email campaign. Most of us do not have a cute kitten related to our mission, but animal and wildlife organizations certainly take advantage of that. And then by size of organization, what I think is really exciting to see is that the small organizations were the ones that saw the largest list growth last year. And in our kind of analysis of what's going on there, what we found is that more and more organizations, regardless of their size or their focus area, are becoming much more savvy with their online outreach and using the internet as kind of a democratizing space where it doesn't matter if you have 2 staff or if you have 20 staff or 200 staff. If you're able to make a really efficient and successful call to action, whether that's join our list, sign up for our newsletter, participate in this campaign, etc. If you're able to do that well, using some of these online spaces, building your community in a free to access online space, you can really see a high return on that. So just a quick note, we're going to be talking about all 3 of these only so that there's perspective against fundraising. So we will still look at a couple slides around advocacy messages. So those messages we define as ones that specifically have a call to action to do something. Sign this petition, call your senator, register for this event, something that has a specific action tied to it and that's not give us money. And the newsletter is, I imagine everybody on the webinar today has something they consider their newsletter, a regularly scheduled message that has, overviews or snippets or updates, etc. So just looking at open rates in general. So this means people have actually opened the email that you have sent them, regardless of what type of message it is. So generally, they're not incredibly high. So for many organizations, they see this and think, awesome, we're ahead of the curve. We're ahead of the average. But if you are below this, I wouldn't say that is a sign that you should stop sending email. I think it's an indication, or rather an invitation, to look at what you could do to improve some of those messages. If there's an opportunity to test out some new subject lines, or really looking at whether your audience is opening those emails on a computer where they have a whole screen, or if they're opening them on their phone, and maybe your newsletters just don't look good on a phone. They might have those really big top banners, and it just doesn't work on a phone, so people may not be engaging. So if you're below these numbers, don't panic, but it is an invitation to see where you could maybe be improving things. And then a quick look at by size of organization, and again, here we see small organizations are kind of taking the win and perhaps being a little bit more effective with their emails by really focusing on who those people are, giving them the content they want, and not necessarily diluting the message. So looking at advocacy specifically to give us some perspective, we can see, like I mentioned before, we often see those campaigns or organizations who are able to put a very real and kind of socially accepted, even if it is not issue-based, face on what they're doing. So environmental organizations, wildlife organizations, you know, showing that wolf out in the wild that you're trying to preserve, or you know, sharing how your organization is going to help protect your state when, you know, different climate issues are happening, etc. Advocacy for those organizations where they've built a list of people that care about that topic, it's often easier for them to call them to action. But the key here, and why we talk about advocacy before talking about fundraising, is that this is often the best way to filter your list for a fundraising campaign. If you can see, you know, this section of people in your database have all signed that petition already, and they continue to open the emails, you know, related to that topic, they're ready to give you money. But if you're not, you know, if you're not tying any action or any advocacy type messages to the same list of people first, and secondly to a topic that you're then going to run some fundraising component with, you're really missing out on an opportunity to figure out who those people are that are primed to become donors, and give them a message that says, hey, we know that you've taken action. You know, thank you for signing that petition. Or even, you know, we know that you're one of our lead advocates. You know, something to really play up that you are tracking and you see how much they've done, and then ask them for that donation. And here it is by organization size again as well. So this is one piece that I think is really important when thinking about advocacy, and to follow that with a fundraising message or appeal is the completion rate, right? Clicking on something in the email was not completing the action, but clicking on something in the email to drive them to that petition and actually filling it out, or drive them to that web page where they were going to learn more about that topic, or whatever it is, knowing how many people are completing the actions and not just opening the email and clicking on something in the email is really critical. It's really great to see that normally the page completion rate here is so high, but we'll see this change once we start looking at fundraising and talk about some of what we've seen that you can avoid issues there from other organizations. And here's page completion rate by size again. So let's talk about fundraising, shall we? So here's those click-through rates for fundraising messages, and you see they are incredibly small compared to the click-through rates for advocacy. And that's, you know, this isn't new. We do this benchmarks report every year, and they're consistently, you know, much lower than advocacy messages. And here they are by organization size. And again, the small organizations are winning. So here's the page completion rate now for fundraising. So this means you've clicked in that email, you're on that donation form, and you're going to fill out that page and actually click donate. And some of what we see for page completion rate, or rather page abandonment, when it comes to fundraising messages versus advocacy messages, because many of these organizations, you know, are doing both, is that advocacy page was so easy. You know, you clicked through. If we were all in a room together and I could see everybody, I'm sure that everyone would raise their hand if I said, have you ever, you know, received one of those emails and clicked through and it was a petition or a form letter, you know, to send to the president or something like that. Well, think about that experience. When you click through and there's that letter there, the page looks nice. You know, the letter is kind of already drafted. You could always edit it if you wanted to. And normally all you're filling out is your name and your zip code, you know, or your email address and your zip code, something really basic. It makes it easy to complete that page, right? Because you didn't have to do too much. You were already in that moment. It was a consistent message with compared to what was in the email. You know, same action. But with fundraising, So often organizations are saying, okay, great, click through. Oh, this donor, we want to know so much about them. We want to have all this information, all of these fields. The page itself often looks different than either the campaign that's being run or the message that was sent out in that email. So looking for ways to first and above all else, simplify that form. If you can just take the credit card number, their name, zip code, hit donate, the better. The fewer things there, the better, because you can always send a follow-up email that says, great, here's the record of your donation. Can you click through and fill out your profile for us? You can always invite them to give you more information later, but the more you ask for in that donation form, the lower the completion rate is going to be. And then secondly, look for ways to really personalize that page and make it feel very connected to the campaign or the ask that you put in that email. Even if it just means using the same photo, the same picture for that earlier example of that wolf that you're saying, we're going to save this wolf's habitat. Well, having the same picture just creates that continuity for your supporters so they feel like, yes, I am donating to that wolf, not, oh, you told me I was going to be donating to this wolf, and now I'm on this page that has a photo of a whale. Well, I don't want to donate to the whale. I want to donate to the wolf. So creating continuity and a clear experience for your supporters will also increase this completion rate. And here it is by organizations. It's very, very close. So it's, again, not as much about how much money you have or how many staff you have. It's about making it simple and easy to do. So then for comparison, I also included some information here about newsletters. And I'm not sure if folks want to chat in, and we can maybe talk about it some more. Feel free to do that if it makes sense for you. But I'm really curious about folks on the webinar today, because we see many organizations will have a newsletter, monthly newsletter, for example, and it's kind of a divided group. So some organizations see those newsletters as kind of general information or updates about the organization. And then other organizations see them as, a regular kind of tune in each month for this update. And they include fundraising calls to action or maybe updates about a current fundraising campaign that's in progress. So curious if folks on the webinar today are doing one or the other, feel like their newsletter is kind of sacred and can't have any of those calls to action in it, or if they're using that newsletter as a secondary fundraising message. And here they are, again, by size. Unsubscribe rates I want to talk about just for a second, because, of course, when you log in to your email marketing tool, whether you're using MailChimp or Constant Contact or Emma or whatever you're using, all of them, when you log in, you're going to see people have unsubscribed. And here's some unsubscribe rates across different types of organizations, just to prove that everybody has that happen to them, and it's okay. But our larger lesson out of unsubscribes, and something that we've seen in our analysis every year, is that those organizations who have unsubscribe rates that are maybe higher than others are actually very engaged lists. They are normally organizations who also have pretty high open rates, pretty high click-through rates. So the reason people are unsubscribing is because they're opening those emails and they just decided, these aren't really for me anymore, or maybe I'm not interested in this campaign anymore. And so it's actually an indicator that it's a pretty healthy list. It's a group of people who are actively reading your content. Organizations who have really low unsubscribe rates are often organizations who have really low open rates. So instead of people opening that email, either reading it and taking action, or reading it and thinking, this just isn't for me anymore, I'm going to unsubscribe, they have people who just never open the messages. So they're just paying to send emails, and they're not really going anywhere. So it isn't necessarily bad to open up your email client and see, oh gosh, we had a couple people unsubscribe this month. totally fine. It means people are reading your messages. And here they are by size. And again, you see they're very, very consistent over organization size. So a couple of slides on volume, because this is always something folks ask. How many times can we send an email asking for money? Well, you can send probably more than you're sending now. It's probably fair to say that what folks on the webinar today are sending is less than you could get away with. And what we have seen is that by sending more messages, there's not any correlation to higher unsubscribe rates or people, not donating anymore. So try maybe adding a couple more to your plan. So here's the number of messages per month that a specific supporter on your list receives. And you can see 4 is about most of the organizations, so 1 a week, essentially, with environmental organizations being higher. And this does not mean every single person on your list is getting the same message every week. It really underscores the need for segmenting your list and having some idea of, okay, here are the wolf people, and here are those whale people. And they each get a message this week, but it's going to be a different message with a different picture, for example. And Rob, I just wanted to pause. Was there a question? I just saw a chat show up.
There was not. We're all
okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. So here's another look at this message volume topic. This is over the whole year. So per year, per individual subscriber on a list. And red is the portion that are direct fundraising emails. An email that was sent asking for them to donate, contribute to a campaign, etc. And you can see for everyone except for environmental, fundraising messages are so much larger as a percentage of the messages. And for environmental, they're still very close to being the largest one. So this goes back to what I was saying earlier about newsletters and seeing other ways to tie people either to a campaign or set them up to be ready for that fundraising message. It may, depending on how your current communications work now, you may look at this and think, oh, we send so many fewer than that. But if you are consistently putting a fundraising ask in your newsletter, you're starting from your subscribers' perspective to kind of muddy the waters about whether that's a newsletter or a fundraising message, right? It's probably technically still a newsletter, but it is still including those calls to action for either a specific action or a donation. So now we're going to move over into some fundraising specific charts. So here's the change in revenue. So everyone has increased. We don't necessarily have to say the change in online revenue, because we can say the increase in online revenue for organizations. And we can see that rights organizations had a very small increase. And when we look at these year over year, like I was saying earlier, we can really see shifts in these either increases or advocacy message sends. All these different pieces are influenced by, of course, natural disasters, political seasons, what's happening in the news. All those pieces kind of play into things, because even if it's a small organization and you're not, involved in a campaign or, anything like that, your numbers will still be influenced by the fact that people maybe, feel really obligated to put their dollars towards a different issue right now because of something in the news, or because they feel like, there's another organization competing for the same amount of money they maybe were going to donate to you. And here it is by organizations. And the thing here to note, even though we've seen, list growth and open rates increasing with small organizations, we see this, the only change where it's negative. And for us, what we looked at was the year before. So in 2013, yes, they were getting a lot more people on their list, but they hadn't yet started donating. And as I was talking about before, organizations who are using those advocacy pipelines to really prep people for a donation ask maybe haven't gotten to that stage yet with some of those organizations coming online. And here are a few notes about gifts, so one-time gifts and monthly gifts, etc. So we'll look at all of these. So here it is in by sector again. Here it is with the gift size, which I think is very interesting because so much of the science in online donations, when you hit that form and you're saying, give us $10 or $25 or $50, organizations who play with those numbers, who say, actually, in our campaign, we're all about our 36, new cities that are part of this work. So please donate $36 or $360 or whatever. The more you can change those numbers so that they're different than the usual suspects of 10, 25, 50, etc. And the more that they're specifically tied to the campaign, it isn't just $50 because that's a great round number, but it's, $52 because there's 52, items on your legislative report card. Whatever it is, has shown for many organizations to increase the average gift size because people feel like, they don't have to just think about their normal $25 gift they always give. They're going to default to those numbers you're sharing. So here it is as directly from an email versus clicking through from somewhere else to that donation page. And you can see the other online for all of these is higher as far as the gift size. But again, this goes back to if you're getting, for international there, $185 as that average one-time gift because someone, was reading your website or they were engaging with you somewhere else online, and that happens less frequently than $121 is the average gift size clicking through from email. Still really critical to share that case in email, what number you want and why it's important. And here it is, again, with the monthly gift versus the one-time gift. I'm not sure how many folks on the line offer or really cultivate monthly giving, but we can talk about that as well if that's of interest to folks. And then one last slide here is just the monthly giving as a percentage of the overall revenue. Again, because for some organizations, monthly giving is really the focus and something that they're trying to cultivate even as a membership type to separate certain supporters from others. All right, jumping into social media for a few comparison slides here. So this is something that comes out of this benchmarks report each year, and we're trying to understand for an organization that has 1,000 email addresses on its list. What does that really mean? Should you be expected to have 1,000 Facebook friends and 1,000 Tumblr followers? And what does that number mean? What's the benchmark there? So what we see is that for every 1,000 email addresses you have in your database, at least groups in our study show an average of 149 Facebook fans. So for 1,000 emails, there's only 149 Facebook fans and only 53 Twitter followers. So some organizations look at that and they think we only have 1,000, people in our database, but we have 5,000 Facebook fans, and that could feel great that you have so many fans on Facebook. But what we've seen with that kind of reverse of the spectrum is that you may not be having the kind of engagement you really need to be successful with either advocacy or fundraising, because those people are on Facebook, right? And as we all know, we're not in charge of Facebook. We don't get to say that everyone receives these messages. You're not able to really communicate as consistently and effectively as you are if you had them in your database and you could send them an email or you could call them on the phone. So really encouraging people on Facebook, if that's where you have a lot of folks, to also sign up for your newsletter or to register with you on your website in order to attend that event. Something so that you're moving their contact information into your database. Otherwise, you can continue to build up that list on Facebook, but you're going to have to rely on the probability of Facebook's, algorithm to get your message to them. So here's just a quick glance at the increase in Twitter followers. Number of Twitter followers for organizations in the study and for Facebook. So you can see, again, those organizations that can post their photos of that wolf in its natural habitat with all of its little wolf pups, they get to win on Facebook because they have all of the wonderful wildlife photos. And here, of course, is a quick slide on another very popular question we get, which is, if we're sending this many emails per month, how many times should we be posting on Facebook every day or every week? And we can see there's a lot higher threshold for tweets because they kind of dissolve into the Twitter stream versus Facebook posts. You can see most organizations are hovering just above 1 a day. So making sure there's something every day for their fans to engage with. And here it is by organization size. You can see that on Facebook, small organizations are the ones that dip below that 1 a day mark, probably because of capacity. There's fewer staff to be posting every day. But on Twitter, they're staying fairly consistent with other sizes. So I'm just going to pause really quickly if there's questions about all of that we covered. That was only a portion of the report findings. So again, if you want to browse through all of that or share that with your staff, the report is free and you can get it online at mrbenchmarks.com. I'm not seeing any questions, at least, Rob, that you pushed.
Nope,
Okay.
there's no questions as of now.
Awesome. Well, feel free to be the first one to ask a question, and you will receive 100 karma points. So moving on, now that we've got all of that data and perspective, really what does that look like for you and your organization? So first I want to talk about engaging with donors. And one of the biggest and earliest mistakes that we see organizations make when they're starting to really focus on engaging donors is forgetting that you probably already have a list of donors. Step one is not go out there on the internet and recruit a bunch of new donors. Step one is talk to the people that you already have on your list, that are already on your Facebook page, that are already showing up to your events. For many organizations, when they do that kind of internal look, they realize, well, we have this database, we have all these emails, but we don't actually know which of them have donated. Or we have people that come to an event, but we haven't tracked their event participation in the database where we track their donations. So we're not able to follow up and say, hey, thanks for coming, won't you donate so we can do that again? Because they don't know, they can't make those connections. And that's a really integral piece to have in place. Regardless of the size of organization you have, having the infrastructure in place so that you can make these asks and that you can follow up with people effectively is critical. It also means you're able to look at, not just what they have done, but the kinds of things they're interested in. Figuring out, gosh, we send this newsletter every month, but here's a portion of folks who every month click on those stories about our volunteers. Maybe we should just send a message to those people that's only about volunteers, or maybe invites them to be a volunteer because we can tell that they're really interested in this. Or for many organizations, when you sign up on their website, to receive their emails, whether it's newsletters or whatever, there's an optional, kind of checkbox list of, are you interested in, to continue using this example, are you interested in wolves or whales or wildlife in general, or maybe you're interested in backyard gardening, whatever those topics are, so that you can kind of decipher, gosh, we have a lot more people interested in wolves than we do in whales. Maybe we should try and run this wolf campaign versus this whale campaign. You're able to really make decisions based on what you know about folks that are already on your list, instead of thinking, let's go find all the wolf people. You may already have them on your list. So a few notes here. First, the type of conversation you're trying to start, the way you're talking about your mission, the way that you want to talk about the need for this donation is going to be different, and it's going to take a lot more planning than it is actually if you were just to take somebody out to lunch. You've got some research on them, you know who they are, and you're going to make that ask. Because when you're sending it out online, an email that links to a website page that probably also has content going out on social media, not only are you thinking about connecting all of those so they make sense, that they're all referencing the same call to action, but it also means you have to have a tangible way of saying $10 makes a difference. And for many organizations, when we think about justifying, our fundraising ask, we're really great at saying what $10,000 could do for us, and hoping that someone will write a $10,000 check, or saying, $10,000 would mean so much to us. Can you donate to get us to $10,000? But a lot of organizations miss out on that really key piece, which is your $10,000 will not just help get us towards $10,000, but your $10 will, deliver, this many meals, or provide us with this many new cones to put on the field. Like really translating what those donation numbers are, and not just focusing on that one big one at the top. Being data-driven, I think, is tied, of course, to the infrastructure piece we were talking about, but it also is one of the few pieces we see that dramatically sets organizations apart from those who are not as successful online. Those who have really made sure that they have, some good check boxes on the website when you sign up for things, are tracking in the database if someone donated to a specific campaign, like their donation came during a campaign period, or they donated at an event because they just felt moved. So even the type of donation that's being made, and where that came from. Was it an online donation? Was it a donation over the phone? All of that data is actually helping you craft, even in real time, how best to continue pushing different asks. And this is a really important place where what we talked about earlier comes into play with advocacy, and noting, you may not really know who's interested in donating, and you don't want to just, for the very first time, send them a message that says, please donate to us. But if you could send out a message that says, this is a really important, priority for us, or we have an upcoming event, and we would just, we would love to see, some changes for this year's event. Vote on which of these you think we should incorporate into our event. It doesn't have to be, an incredible nationwide, advocacy pitch. It can be something as easy as, hey, we've been thinking about at the finish line for the races having, these different kinds of ribbons. Which ribbons do you like? Just something that gets people to click through and start engaging with you, so that you can track, gosh, here we sent it to 1,000 people. 400 people voted. Let's email those 400 and say, great, we're going to go buy those ribbons. Can you donate $10 so we can get the ones you wanted? you're tying it directly to the action they asked for, and it justifies the price that you're asking. So looking for ways to use this data that's available, who clicked through on an email, to really target what you're asking for. And of course, being consistent doesn't just mean you ask them all the time. Being consistent is that continuity piece we talked about earlier, so that if you receive that email and you click through and the website shows a picture of a totally different event, a lot of folks who are on the receiving end of this process feel like, oh, I guess I must be on the wrong page, or my donation isn't going where I thought it was going to go. So really testing out that experience and making sure it is what you want it to be. It's supportive of them donating and completing that form, and it's as simple as possible. Of course, what works today or what worked yesterday, unfortunately, may not work tomorrow. And especially with fundraising asks, there are just so many things that you could be testing and trying every time. And most online systems actually do make it pretty easy for you. One of the most important things that I can't stress enough is doing A/B testing. And I can talk about this more if folks chat in that have questions or want to talk more about A/B testing. But even the most basic one is subject line testing. So most email marketing clients will allow you to say, here's the message, here's the list of people we want you to send it to, and we want to do 2 different subject line tests. So we want, some people to receive a message that has this subject line, and we want another set of people to get this subject line. And we want to test which one does better. And then the next time we send an email, we know, hey, this kind of subject line did really well last time. Let's try that. Because if it means an increase in opens and an increase in click-throughs, of course, you definitely want to try anything that'll get you to that increase. And there are also free and very easy non-technical tools that you can use to do that kind of A/B testing on your website too. So you could say, here's our donation landing page, and we want to see if a photo does better than no photo, or we want to try this bulleted list of what your $10 were due, or this graphic that kind of shows the same information. So you can test out those different things, and Optimizely, for example, is a really easy-to-use tool that'll automate that for you. It'll randomize which page people are seeing when they hit the website, and it'll show you, gosh, this one's doing way better. You should really keep this photo up. It's getting better results. So when it comes to using social media in all of this outreach and engagement and list building, what should you really be thinking about? I can't stress enough that it isn't about engaging with people on Facebook. It's about engaging with a certain group of people that are critical to your mission. Because focusing on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or anything else is focusing too much on that tool. It's saying, gosh, we really want to build a house with a hammer versus we want to build a house that looks like this. And, for this part of the job, maybe a hammer makes sense. So really focusing on who you're trying to engage, especially when that means maybe for that message or for that campaign or for this portion of your work, it doesn't make sense to be on Facebook, or that content doesn't make sense to be there because those aren't the folks that engage with you on Facebook. So focusing on the people and knowing what those goals are for your campaign will help you figure out the best places to engage. With social media and knowing that only a fraction of people are going to see those messages, it's also, I think, a great opportunity to use content that you have instead of feeling like you need to be creating brand new content every day. Especially if, we saw those numbers, an average of 1 post a day on Facebook. You don't need to be creating all of that brand new, but if you have, say, even a dozen kind of great, compelling photos from one of your recent events, spread those out. Do 1 picture a day maybe 2 or 3 a week for a few weeks. And that way, you've already got a couple of those days covered, and you can post it with, here's another photo from our recent event. Look how fun it was. Everybody was there. Can't wait to see you next time. And next time you post that photo, it doesn't have to be the same caption. Instead, it can say, we love supporting people in this specific event, and just talk about that event. You can do a lot with the captioning and the content you put with it, but that way you're not generating or trying to go take new photos every day or trying to find new stories to share every day. Which leads us to finding and sharing those stories. Knowing that on social media, some of the most engaging content is not necessarily about you. It's an opportunity to find and share the stories that are about your supporters, your participants, your attendees, your donors. You have so many people that are engaged with your mission on all these different angles. Sharing those stories and inviting them to contribute them to you, to share updates. Here was a story from a year ago, and now here's where they are. Just sharing an update can be really compelling. And if you make it easy to share those, whether it's hitting share on Facebook or including it in your newsletter so people can forward that newsletter, leading to people joining your list, etc., the easier you can make it for individuals to share those stories, the better. Because, again, they're demonstrating your mission, but they're not about the organization. They're not pieces of dry content explaining what you do. They're showing the impact you have. This is a little bit of that data-driven piece, but with social media, it's so easy to see in real time, what's working and what isn't. You can see, 2 hours later, gosh, no one is engaging with this Facebook post, and everybody engaged with the one yesterday. What did we do yesterday that we didn't do today? What can we adjust here? Or, we sent out this email, and it linked to this video, and a lot of people are watching the video, but no one's visiting the website. Oh my gosh, we don't have a link to the website, in the video. Let's get a link up there right away. So you can be watching how people are engaging with your content, and that doesn't mean you have to just say, great, well, I guess that many people clicked through, or I guess nobody liked that Facebook message. That's an opportunity to adjust, even in the middle of a campaign, what you want to do and what content makes the most sense. So when we're thinking about these tools, really, we could talk about tools for the next 3 days on this webinar, but when we're thinking about tools, the important piece to remember is that your website is actually the center of it all. It's that center hub in your whole wheel. Even though it is your website and it's not, some brand new social media site or something else, it is incredibly important because it's where your emails are pointing to. It's where those Facebook posts are probably pointing back to. It is really the center of it all, and making sure that when you're on your website, it's clear how to go back out to those different spokes will really increase, again, engagement, but also people feeling like they can choose the path that makes sense for them. So if I clicked through from Facebook to learn more about the organization, and I can't see, where are all of these videos you talk about? Or where are all of these photos that I've seen on Facebook? They don't know where to go to continue seeing certain types of content. People often get lost. Like we talked about a great deal earlier, email is certainly not dead, but you could kill it off if you're not doing it right. So again, thinking about, okay, is this an advocacy message or a fundraising message or a newsletter, and where am I ultimately trying to send people? If it's an advocacy message because next month we're going to open up a fundraising ask, let's really think about how we track this advocacy message and the response to it so we can use that data in the fundraising message, for example. And I hear all of the time from folks that, social media is just changing so quickly, and there's always these new tools that it's not even worth it to try and get engaged there because it's all just going to change. Well, yes, sure, but at this point, Facebook is 10 years old. So it isn't all changing so quickly that, it's moving at such a pace you won't be able to engage and that you won't be able to succeed. So just start using some tools today, even for your own just personal use, so you can get a hang of really what's working and what other organizations are doing, and start. Don't feel bad about starting. So some of the most established, long-standing, and incredibly high usage rates, we've talked about Facebook and Twitter, of course, but Tumblr and YouTube are incredibly popular. If you look at the stats about how many hours of YouTube videos are watched each day, it doesn't seem possible that anyone has a job. It seems like everyone is just watching YouTube videos. And some more popular platforms that are really kind of taking hold are Instagram and Snapchat and Pinterest, of course. And then a few more to consider, especially if you're trying to run a crowdfunding campaign, so people online donating to each other or to team captains or community volunteers. Razoo and CrowdRise, IOB, and CauseVox is a great platform. It also has a number of kind of best practices and ebooks that are freely available. And then a few donation processing options, of course. Your database, depending on which tool you're using, most likely has a donation processor connected into it. Network for Good and PayPal are also really easy to get started with options there. So I know we're already basically at the end, but I'd love to hear if there are questions, if there are topics we didn't get to. I'm more than happy to follow up with folks after today. So if you have a question, you're not quite sure how to phrase it or how to talk about it, feel free to send me an email too. I'm happy to answer questions anytime. But Rob, were there questions I missed?
There were not. There were not anything specific. So Amy, thank you very much for this definitely very in-depth presentation on nurturing your small dollar donors. We greatly appreciate it. You can see Amy's contact information. This webinar was recorded, so it will be up on our YouTube page, and you can distribute it to your staff and watch it again if there was something that you missed. And I'll also include the link to the report that Amy was discussing so that you guys can get that data and really look at it again. And definitely check out the Nonprofit Technology Network, N10, at their website. And thank you very much, Amy, and everyone have a wonderful day.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
Excellent. Thanks, Amy. Have a good one.
Yep.